денег нет, но сильно не готовы.
Я это тоже заблокировал сразу. Знаешь, как на дороге нет. Заблокируйте все Klara.
В отличие от...
Chopin's Fantasy Impromptu is possibly the most known of all his works, and it's ironic that it wasn't even published during his lifetime. I mean, it's such a good piece, it fits so well under the fingers. It's like the perfect marriage of virtuosity and elegance. And it has a beautiful lyrical cantabile middle section with all the sweetness but none of the melancholy of the nocturne. It eventually got published in 1855, 6 years after Chopin's death, by his friend Julian Fontana, despite Chopin wishing on his deathbed that all the unpublished manuscripts lying around should be burnt. It has some interesting similarities with Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. They're both in C-sharp minor, with fast 16th notes and agitato markings, and Chopin basically stole a note pattern from the cadenza in the Moonlight movement to use in the fantasy impromptu. This is from the cadenza in the moonlight movement to use in the fantasy impromptu. This pattern from the cadenza in the moonlight movement to use in the fantasy impromptu. This is how Beethoven uses it in the cadenza. And this is what Chopin does with it in the fantasy impromptu. The musicologist Ernst Oster writes that Chopin understood Beethoven to a degree that no one else has ever understood him. The fantasy impromptu is perhaps the only instance where one genius discloses to us, if only by means of a composition of his own, what he actually hears in the work of another genius. In 1960, the pianist Arthur Rubinstein acquired a manuscript to the fantasy impromptu with the heading "Composed for Madame la Baronne d'Este," and that probably means that Chopin received a commission for writing it specifically to the Madame, and that's why it wasn't published. And the Rubinstein version is actually quite different than the earlier Fontana version, so you get to decide which one to play. And I'm actually sticking with the early version because I like how some of the left-hand movement feels slightly more natural and uncomplicated. But since there are two versions, you can basically choose whichever one you like best. And in a way, it's also just details that differ. The underlying musical material and character is exactly the same. So the Fontana version is based on some early copies or drafts. And Fontana himself did some quite heavy editing, adding dynamic markings and more. And they have found out that in modern times and removed it from recent urtext editions. And it was actually Julian Fontana who added the fantasy before the impromptu in the title. The two words means basically the same thing, a piece in a freer form and an improvisational character, like it's being created while it's being performed. This octave is just signaling that the piece is starting, and then the left hand starts by itself to set up the expectation of what the right hand is going to play. It's very common to do like a small accelerando, start slightly slower and then speed up, pick up the speed. So the signature feature of this piece is this polyrhythm of 3 against 4. The right hand plays 4 notes and the left hand plays 3 notes in the same time. I was maybe 14 years old when I learned this piece the first time, and I really struggled with these rhythms to separate the hands doing different things at the same time. And after a long time I could do it. I think the trick is to make the hands play the notes independently of the brain. So you just play the notes and then they get together on the beat. So right hand plays 4 notes and left hand plays 3 notes. And then it's much easier said than done, of course, and it takes a lot of practice, but in the end it's possible to do. And when you get it together, it's such a joy to play, because it's actually pretty well written for the hands, because it's in C sharp minor and it's 4 sharps, so the long fingers can play on the black keys and the thumb can play on the white keys. So I can keep my hand in this position. It's really written for the hand for the piano by Chopin. So now we get these initial runs, and then we take a new turn with this A sharp. And we end up on this episode somewhere between G sharp minor and E major. These lovely kind of romantic gestures. Suspensions, of course. This accent that I play on the top note, they're one of those things that I think Fontana added in his edition in the early time. So they're just a suggestion, it's not Chopin's choice, but I like them, so I play them. I think it's a nice variation because we get the same thing 2 times. So the second time I go down in dynamic and I play the melody on top. Bit mystical here. And then I play the melody on the low note again in the end. And then we get back to the initial rounds. And here we go somewhere new again. Now we're getting to the close of the section.
Хорошо, расскажи, как быть музыкантом. Расскажи.
Ну, пианистом, но музыкантом. То есть не инструменталистом, но музыкантом. Нехороший человек, нехороший.
Так.